Begin today the Gemara on Daf Nun Beis, the second line down from the top of the Yamud. Oy Einoi. So the Gemara here is discussing a Braise on Daf Nun Aleph that brings the psukim that speak about spilling the leftovers of the blood that was sprayed on the Mizbeach onto the foundation of the Mizbeach. Shiyare Hadam. Now the Gemara brought that there's a few psukim where it says in the Torah that has to be poured on the Yisaid Mizbeach Ha'oila. So that's extra. Why does it say Yisaid Mizbeach Ha'oila? In other places it says Yisaid Mizbeach. 3 places it says Yisaid Mizbeach Ha'oila. And the Gemara darshans the first time, the second time, now the third time the Braise darshans that it's coming to say that you have to pour all bloods, all leftover bloods of all karbanis, no matter what it is, on the foundation of the Mizbeach. It doesn't say it by all karbanis, but it's from here that we learn that this applies to all karbanis. That's what the Braise says. But then the Braise goes on to say that there's another option how to darshan this. Not necessarily does this extra pasuk of Yisaid Mizbeach Ha'ela come to say regarding all karbanis that you have to pour it on the foundation of the Mizbeach. How else could you translate it? Maybe it is still referring to the zrika of the dam, the spraying of the blood on the corners of the Mizbeach before you come to the leftovers. Now what's the pasuk saying when it says Yisaid Mizbeach Ha'ela? What it's saying is that by the carbon oila, when you spray the blood on the corners of the Mizbeach, you only spray it on the corners where you have a foundation. The foundation of the Mizbeach was only on the west and on the north, Ma'ariv and Safin. It wasn't on all the corners. So it comes out that on one of the corners you don't have a foundation, which is on the Mizrachis Draimis. So what it's saying is that by the carbon oila, when you spray the blood on the corners, it should be sprayed on a corner where there is also a foundation at the bottom of the Mizbeach. Yisaid Mizbeach Ha'oila. When you're spraying the blood of the oila, there has to be in a place where there's a Yisaid. Maybe that's how we should translate this. Okay, that's what the Braise suggests to say. So now the Gemara here addresses this and explains in the lashon of the pasuk, would it actually be possible to explain that this is what it's saying? Let's see. Look, the Gemara, Oy einai ela mizbeach shel oila yehei liyisaid. Maybe I should say that when it says in the lashon of the pasuk that al yisaid mizbeach ha'oila, it's only speaking about the carbon oila. And it's speaking about the spraying of the blood of the carbon oila, and it's saying spray it on the corner where it has also a foundation there. So the Gemara asks on this, how could the Braise even suggest this option? Miksev el yisaid ha'oila. Does the pasuk say yisaid ha'oila, which would indicate that we're speaking only about the carbon oila? Rather, the pasuk says el yisaid mizbeach ha'oila ksev. It says it adds that word mizbeach ha'oila, which means we're not only talking about a carbon oila. We're talking about any carbon. We're saying the mizbeach of the oila. When you bring any carbon, you should pour to the yisaid of the mizbeach ha'oila. So what the Gemara is saying is, the fact that it says mizbeach ha'oila implies that we're not just speaking about a carbon oila. We're speaking about other carbonis as well. So for example, a carbon chatas. Regarding a carbon chatas, you cannot darshan this option, that it's coming to say that spray the blood on the Mizbeach only where there is a Yisaid. Because by carbon chatas, what's the halach of the spraying of the blood of the carbon chatas? It actually has to be sprayed on all 4 corners. By the carbon oila, it's not sprayed on all 4 corners. There would be an option to say that it's coming to tell you regarding the spraying of the blood that it's only sprayed on a corner where there is a Yisaid. You can't say that regarding the carbon chatas. Carbon chatas is actually sprayed on each 4 corners. Each one of the 4 corners. So the lashon of the pasuk, it doesn't say Yisaid ha'oila, which would imply that it's speaking only about a oila. It says Yisaid mizbeach ha'oila. Mizbeach ha'oila means we're talking about any bloods that you're spraying on the mizbeach that is for the oila, but it's any other carbon as well. So over there you can't darshan that it's placed only where there is a Yisaid. So therefore, how does the Braise even suggest this option? So the Gemara answers, no, you could still say that it's talking about spraying the blood. So why does it say over here? So why does it say the lashon of mizbeach ha'oila? If we would say the lashon of the pasuk, yisaid ha'oila havamine bizkifa, I would think that this refers to the zikifa, meaning this is talking here now about the yisaid of the carbon. The yisaid of the mizbeach, that is. In the yisaid of the mizbeach, there's 2 parts. What's the story with the yisaid of the mizbeach? The yisaid of the mizbeach is an amahai, and it also actually goes in a amma. And then you have the rest of the Mizbeach that's above. So you have the horizontal part of the Yisaid and the vertical part of the Yisaid. Right, so if we would only say the Lashon Yisaid ha'oila, hava mine bezikife, then I would say that where do you pour the blood? You pour it on the vertical part of the Yisaid.
There's a crevice there.
Again? Yeah, exactly. It goes in. Correct. It goes in.
It goes down all the way to the earth.
Right. So I would think bizakifa el yisaid. That when it says al yisaid, it means on the vertical part of the yisaid. Hashid ichsev al yisaid mizbeach ha'ila agaga the yisaid. Now that it says the lashon of yisaid mizbeach ha'ila, so that tells me just like the mizbeach itself has a roof on the top of the mizbeach, which is horizontal. It's a landing on the top of the roof of the mizbeach. So too by the yisaid, when you pour the blood on the yisaid of the mizbeach, you don't pour it on the wall of the yisaid, but you pour it on the top, on the roof of this yisaid, which is there, a flat part of the yisaid, exactly, which is an area of an amma as well. That's where you have to pour the blood on the gag of the yisaid. So, which actually means, the Taisus over here brings, you don't have to pour the blood on the gag of the yisaid. It's a little bit hard to aim it, to pour it right over there on the gag of the yisaid. You pour it towards the bottom of the mizbeach, the bottom of the wall of the mizbeach, and you make sure that the blood that you're pouring on the bottom of the wall of the mizbeach will land on the flat part of the foundation of the mizbeach. It's not to pour it on the wall of the yisaid, but on the flat part, on the gag of this yisaid. That's why the pasuk is saying the lashon of mizbeach ha'ila over here. That's that's the diak of the lashon of the pasuk. It doesn't just say yisaid ha'ila, but it says a yisaid mizbeach ha'ila, because it's coming to say regarding the pouring of the blood that it has to be on the gag of the yisaid of the ha'ila. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to the lashon of the Braisa before, where it brought a kavachaimer regarding the halacha that the blood of the mizbeach of the blood of the oila, that is, has to be sprayed only on the place where there is a yisaid. Okay, that drasha that the Braisa suggested to say. Again, let me just clarify again. We have this pasuk here, this extra pasuk of yisaid mizbeach ha'ila, and we have two options how to darshan this. It could either be darshan regarding pouring the remnants of the blood on the corners of the on the yisaid of the mizbeach, or it could be darshan regarding spraying the blood on the mizbeach itself. Okay, so now the Braisa concludes and says that it has to be talking about pouring the blood on the foundation of the mizbeach, not spraying the blood on the mizbeach itself. So how do we know this? So the Rabbi Shmuel over here in the Braisa says that there's a kavachaimer regarding this, that the blood of the carbon has to be sprayed only on the corner where there is a foundation for the mizbeach. That for that there's a kavachaimer. I don't need a pasuk for that. So Amar Rabbi Shmuel says, Gag yisaid lama likra. This, that when I pour the when I spray the blood, so there has to be the yisaid of the mizbeach there in that place, that you pour the blood on the yisaid of the mizbeach. I don't need a pasuk for this. Kavachaimer, again, when he says over here, Gag yisaid lama likra, he's not talking about pouring the leftovers of the blood. He's talking about spraying the blood on the corners of the mizbeach, spray it on a corner of the mizbeach where there also is a yisaid there. For that, Rabbi Shmuel says, I don't need a pasuk, because it's a kavachaimer. What's the kavachaimer? If when it comes to the leftovers of the blood, which is not anymore the kapara. The kapara is by the spraying of the blood. This is just leftovers. But tu'una gag yisaid, it has to be sprayed where? On the place where there is the roof, there's the flat part of the foundation of the mizbeach. Now, if so, tchila sayla, when you're talking about the spraying of the blood on the mizbeach, shemechaperes, which is actually the kapara itself, and it shatuna gag yisaid, definitely it should be done only on a corner where you have that gag of the yisaid of the mizbeach there. So therefore, because we have this kavachaimer, so I know that the spraying of the blood of the oila has to be done in an area, in a corner of the mizbeach where there is a yisaid. So when it says the extra pasuk el yisaid mizbach oila, it's not teaching me that point. It's coming to talk about the leftovers of the blood, that for all karbanis, the leftovers of the blood have to be poured on the mizbeach. Rabbi Kiva now says, Amar Rabbi Kiva, basically the same kavachayim as Rabbi Shmuel, but he adds a certain detail which the Gemara will address. Amar Rabbi Kiva, the kavachayim is when you talk about the leftovers of blood that are not causing the kapara at all. And furthermore, here Rabbi Kiva adds another point. They don't come for a kapara. But nevertheless, where do you pour the leftovers of the blood? On the flat part of the foundation of the mizbeach. So if so, when it comes to the beginning of the oil, which means the spraying of the blood, before you come to the leftovers, the spraying of the blood itself, shemechaperes, this is the kapara of this carbon. Ubal lechaper. It's coming for a kapara. And it didn't shatuna gag yisai. Definitely it should be done in that section of the mizbeach that has the foundation of the mizbeach. You see from this Gemara, this concept that the part of the mizbeach that has a foundation is a more significant part of the mizbeach. If you want the kapara to take effect, it's not enough to have a mizbeach. You have to have a mizbeach with a foundation. When you pour the blood, it's not just enough to pour the blood on the side of the mizbeach or at the corner of the mizbeach. It has to be on the foundation of the mizbeach. So we see here the significance of the foundation of the mizbeach. So both of these Zevochim are saying the same point. If regarding spilling out the blood, I see that the foundation of the mizbeach is significant, even though the pouring out the blood in the leftovers is not the actual kapara itself at all. So when it comes to the kapara of the carbon, and you need to pour it on the mizbeach to get the kapara, you want to go to the significant part of the mizbeach where it has that foundation. For sure, over there it should be necessary to have the yisayt. So imkain, one second. The Braisa concludes imkain ma tamad loime al yisayt mizbach ha'ila. So then when this pasuk, this is the third time the Torah says this. When it says la yisayt mizbach ha'ila, why is the Torah saying this? 10 yisayt l'mizbeach shalayla. That for every single carbon, pour out the blood by the foundation of the mizbeach. That's what this pasuk is coming to say. So this is the conclusion. Again, the point there was there's two options how to darshan yisayid mizbeach ha'ila. Either it's speaking about pouring out the blood, and this is the source for all karbanis to pour out the blood here, or it's speaking about the spraying of the blood of the oila that it should be done in the corner where there is a yisayid. So that the Bryce is saying, Rabbi Shmuel says, Rabbi Akiva says, for that I have a Zevochim. So therefore the conclusion is, this extra pasuk is speaking about, this is the source for all karbanis that has to be poured on the foundation of the Mizbeach.
This you say that we're talking about where you pour the blood.
Yeah.
This is the same you said when we refer to Zevochim by wine.
I'm not sure about that.
And by especially even the water.
I'm not sure. I don't. Over there it talks about the shittin that was on the top of the Mizbeach, that there was holes going down. I don't think it's the same area. No, I don't think so. Okay, so now here what the Gemara focuses on is, what's the difference between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva? They're saying the exact same Zevochim with a slight difference. Rabbi Akiva just adds the words that when it comes to the leftover blood in the Mizbeach, they're not mechaper, and then he adds ve'ein bo'en lechaper. They don't come for a what's those added words? They don't come for a kapara. Rabbi Barave says, Shirai ma'akfim mikibinayu. The difference between them is, these leftover blood, do they hold up the kapara? Mar savar ma'akvi. So according to Rabbi Akiva, they will hold up. Sorry, Rabbi Shmuel, that is. Thank you. According to Rabbi Shmuel, they will hold up the kapara, because Rabbi Shmuel uses the lashon, they are not the actual kapara. That's all he says. Einam mechaperes means that when you pour the leftover blood, that's not the avodah that causes the kapara. However, the kapara, when you spray the blood, is dependent upon this. If you're not going to pour out the shirayim, it's going to prevent the kapara that was done before from taking effect. But Omar Savar, Rabbi Akiva's opinion is, loy ma'akvi. Not only is the pouring of the blood not the actual kapara itself, it's not even contingent upon this. It doesn't affect the kapara at all. The kapara is complete and in effect right after you finish spraying the blood. That's why Rabbi Akiva adds that word. Not only ein mechaprim, but the ein bon lekapara. It serves no purpose. It's not a condition for the kapara at all. That's what they're arguing about. Rav Papa says, no, that's not why Rabbi Akiva added those words. Ein bon lekapara. Kula alma, regarding every carbon of an animal, everyone agrees, shirayim ein makven, that once you finish spraying the blood, that is the avodah that brings the kapara, and then the kapara is already in effect. It's not now going to be dependent on anything that's done later. But they're only arguing regarding a chatas that's with a bird. Over here, by the bird, the avodah is done differently. By a bird, you don't receive blood in a vessel and pour in the mizbeach. You take from the bird itself with your fingers and you put it on the mizbeach. And then what do you do after the zrika, or after you place with your fingers on the mizbeach? You take the bird itself and you squeeze out the blood onto the mizbeach. So now it's regarding this, when you squeeze the leftover bloods of the bird onto the mizbeach. Here there's an argument whether it's ma'akiv or not. Ma'asava ma'akiv. Rabbi Shmuel says that squeezing out the blood from the body of the bird onto the mizbeach, although it's not the kapara itself, but it will prevent the kapara of taking effect. But Umar Sava, Rabbi Akiva says loy ma'akiv, that it will not hold back the kapara. So it's only regarding this point that they argue. But regarding the actual shiyarei adam by a carbon, Everybody agrees that not only the kapara comes from the zrike, but the kapara is in effect right after the zrike. The shirayim of the dam is not a condition for that at all. Says the Gemara Taikava say that Rav Papa and Abraisa we see like Rav Papa said that even Rabbi Shmuel, everybody agrees that it's not ma'akiv. The shirayim of the blood poured on the mizbech is not ma'akiv, because the Braisa Dashins it says was kol hapar yishafeich. Lashon the actual lashon of the pasuk it says ves kol dam hapar yishpeich al yisaid mizbech hayla. So this is a pasuk that says by the par koyim Mashiach the bloods are brought inside to spray inside the Beis Hamikdash. And then afterwards, the leftovers of the blood is spilled on the foundation of the Zeach. Why does it say over here this word hapar? It could have just simply said, "V'skol hadam yishbech l'yisod mizbeach." We know we're talking about this part. Why does it add again the word hapar? So this is to learn from here to another place. Limit al par yom kippurim shatam matan dam l'yisod. Because we're learning from here to the part of Yom Kippur that you have to have pouring of the leftovers of the blood on the foundation of the Mizbeach, Divrei Rebbe. This is Rebbe's opinion. On Rabbi Shmuel, on this Rabbi Shmuel says, it's not necessary to have a pasuk for that. Kal v'chaimer. The fact that by the power of Yom Kippur, it has to be poured, the leftover blood has to be poured on the foundation of the Mizbeach, I can learn with a Kal v'chaimer. Because ma imi she'ein nichnas damay lifnim. If, l'chayva that is, if when it comes to blood, where there's no obligation to bring this carbon and to bring the blood inside, and that's the Par Kayim Mashiach. The Par Kayim Mashiach is only bringing a carbon because he sinned. He has to bring it as a kapara, which means this is not a carbon which is an obligation, an annual obligation. It's if he sinned, then he is going to have to bring this carbon. So therefore, it's not considered to be a chayva in that sense. But nevertheless, torn yisaid. But what do you do with the leftover blood? You have to go ahead and pour it on the foundation of the mizbeach. If so, misha nichnas dami lefnim chayva. Regarding the par of Yom Kippur, to bring this carbon is an annual obligation. You must. So for sure, regarding this carbon, there's more of a stringency. Ein eden shatan yisaid. Most definitely, you should take the blood and pour it on the foundation of the mizbeach. So I could learn from the par kayim Mashiach to the par of Yom Kippur with a kal v'chaimer. I don't need this extra word of par here. Amar Rabbi Kiva. Now Rabbi Kiva says about this a similar kal v'chaimer. Oma misha ein dami nichnas lifnim lifnai v'lifnim. If when it comes to the blood of the Par Kayim Mashiach, that's not brought inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that's lifnai v'lifnim. Bein l'chayv bein l'mitzvah. It's not brought inside. Not the Par Kayim Mashiach. The blood is not brought inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. It's not an obligation, and it's not a mitzvah either. But ton Yisayid, nevertheless, has to be poured on the foundation of the Mizbeach. Mi shenichnas damai chayva lifnai v'lifnim. So the one that has the blood, that there's an obligation for it to be brought inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. That's the part of Yom Kippur. Ein adin shatan yisayit. Most definitely, it should have to be poured on the foundation of the Mizbeach. Okay, so over here you see the same kind of kal v'chaimer from he's learning it from the Par Kayim Mashiach to the par of Yom Kippur. Elamai, his kal v'chaimer is contrasting these two, showing how the par of Yom Kippur is much more stringent. It's brought inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, whereas this is not brought inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So therefore, we know that it has to be poured on the foundation of the Mizbeach. I would think that by the par of Yom Kippur, I learned out that it must be poured on the foundation of the Mizbeach. I would think that this is ma'akiv, that this is a must that holds back the kapara of Yom Kippur to take effect. Talmud Laimar, but the pasuk says, "V'chila mechaper es hakodesh." What do I learn from this pasuk? Sholmu kol akapares kulam. When you finish doing the kapara, and the kapara here refers to spraying the blood in the right places inside, that's the completion of the kapara. I don't need any additional thing to be done, and therefore the pouring of the blood afterwards does not hold up the kapara. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. That's what Rabbi Shmuel says. Okay, so now the Gemara says, I could also, with the similar logic of the kal v'chaimer that we said before, I can say a similar kal v'chaimer as well over here. Now, before we were talking about a kal v'chaimer from the part of Yom Kippur to the Par Kayim Mashiach, but now the Gemara says there's another carbon. There's the carbon of the Nasi. The Nasi that brings a carbon when he does an Aveda, and over there it also says that you pour the blood on the Yisaid of the Mizbeach Hayla. So we can make a kal v'chaimer like this. Kal v'chaimer le Par Kayim Mashiach. I can make a kal v'chaimer for this Par Kayim Mashiach from where? From the carbon of the Nasi. Meyata, and as follows. If when it comes to the carbon of the nasi, he brings a goat, if he does an aveda, and now his blood is not sprayed on the inside mizbeach at all. The blood of his carbon, it's sprayed on the outside mizbeach. It's not an obligation, b'chlal this carbon, because it's only if he sins. It's not an obligation. And even when he does bring it, the blood is not brought at all inside. But but nevertheless, it requires this blood is the leftovers. It's required to be spilled on the foundation of the mizbeach. The blood of the carbon of the par kohen Mashiach. The blood of his carbon when he sins does have to be brought inside the Beis Hamikdash. Bein l'chayva, bein l'mitzvah. It's an obligation and it's a mitzvah. Now over here Rashi has a discussion whether you should be guided the word l'chayva, because before the Gemara said regarding the par kohen Mashiach that it's not called a chayva, since ultimately this carbon is not an obligation. It's only if he sins. So why are we using the term chayva here? But Rashi says, in contrast to the par of Yom Kippur, you can't say par kohen Mashiach is a chayva. Par of Yom Kippur is a chiyuv every year. Yom Kippur, Par Kohen Mashiach, is only if he sins. But in contrast to the carbon of the nasi, which is also a carbon only if he sins. So the Gemara uses the term chayva. Once he did sin and he has to bring this carbon, so now the carbon that he's bringing is going to be a mitzvah and even a chayva. Now that he's bringing the carbon, it's a chayva, and we're saying that this blood of the Par Kohen Mashiach, it's a chayva and a mitzvah to be brought inside the Beis Hamikdash. Ein adin shatan yisaid. So most definitely it should have to be poured on the foundation of the mizbeach. Okay, so just like before, the Gemara said that we don't need any pasuk. I could learn out from the part of Yom Kippur to the part of the Kohen Mashiach that has to be poured on the foundation of the mizbeach. Now I have a kavachaymer to the part of the Kohen Mashiach from the carbon of the nasi. Just like the carbon of the nasi, I see that it has to be poured on the foundation of the mizbeach. So to beneged to the par kohen Mashiach, definitely it has to be poured on the foundation of the mizbeach. So yachol yakvenu. So I would think that this would be ma'akev. Oh, so what's the pshat of here when the Gemara says yachol yakvenu? It's the same thing before. I forgot to explain it before. The reason the Gemara now or the Braisa now is asking yachol yakvenu is because if you have this kal v'chaymer, so then it comes out that you have the Torah telling me this halacha of pouring the blood on the mizbeach, the leftover blood, twice, because it says it once in the pasuk explicitly. Veskol dam apar yishpoich, so that says it by the par kohen Mashiach, and the extra word par is saying it regarding the par of Yom Kippur, and besides the pasuk saying it, I also have a kavachaymer. So if I already have a kavachaymer, why does the pasuk have to say it? So it's because the Torah wants to say this halacha twice. So what's the rule by kachim? Whenever the Torah says by a carbon anything twice, it's saying it to tell you that it's ma'akiv. That's why the Braisa is asking here and before, yachol yakvenu. I would think that pouring the leftover blood on the foundation of the mizbeach is a must. Talmud loymar veskol hapar yishpoich. The Torah here, when it says this halacha of pouring the leftover blood on the mizbeach, it changes the language. It uses a different kind of lashon. Veskol hapar yishpoich. Rashi explains what's the change of the language. In all the other avodas that it speaks about the carbon, it says v'lokach, v'toval, v'nosan, which is a very clear instruction to the kohen what he should do: take, spray, put. Over here, when it comes to the blood on the mizbeach achitza, and it doesn't on the foundation of the mizbeach ha'olad, it doesn't use the lashon v'shafach. It says v'eskol hapar yishpoich. So the pasuk is switching the lashon to show you that it's not the same obligation. Nitkoy hakasav laesei v'asei shirare mitzvah. The Torah is changing the language so that to let you know that it's not a mitzvah. I say that it must be done this way, and it's only shirare mitzvah. It's the leftovers of the mitzvah. Loim alacha, to tell you shirayim ein ma'akven, that the shirayim of a carbon is not ma'akiv. So this is the source that the Gemara brings there, that you see here in this Braisa, like Rav Papa said before, that Rabbi Shmuel also agrees that the shirayim of the blood that has to be poured on the mizbeach is not ma'akiv. So the relevance of this is, what happens if you finish spraying all the blood, and there are no leftovers? There's no leftovers of the blood. So what happens now? You have nothing to pour in the mizbeach. So if it would be ma'akiv, you would have to shecht a whole new carbon and spray the blood again and make sure you have leftovers. Or what happens if after you spray the blood, the leftovers get spilled and you couldn't go ahead and pour it on the foundation of the mizbeach? It's not ma'akiv. You don't have to shecht a whole new carbon and spray the blood again and have the leftovers of the blood. That's what you learn from the lashon from the language, where the pasuk switches the language to tell me this point. Okay, but now the Gemara goes back to what Rav Papa, another other point that Rav Papa said. Rav Papa said that according to Rabbi Shmuel, the bird, by the chatas of the bird over there, to be mematzeh, to squeeze out the remnants of the blood in the bird on the mizbeach, that is ma'akev the kapara. Fragt the Gemara, could that be? V'savar Rabbi Shmuel mitzui chatas ha'oif ma'akev. Could it be that Rabbi Shmuel holds that squeezing out the bird after you put already the bloods in the mizbeach, would that be ma'akev the kapara? But v'atana debei Rabbi Shmuel, it was taught that Rabbi Shmuel said that when it says by the pasuk, by the bird, v'anishar badam yimatzei, if there's left over, v'hanishar, it says, whatever is left over of this blood should be squeezed onto the mizbeach. What that means is v'hanishar yimatzei, but v'shein nishar la yimatzei. If there's more blood left over in the body of the bird, so then you squeeze it out on the mizbeach. If there's no blood left over, so then you don't squeeze it out. So he's clearly teaching that it says ve'anishar, which means only if it's left over. That's the Gemara Trei Tanoiv. I'll leave it to Rabbi Shmuel. There's an argument what Rabbi Shmuel's opinion is regarding this, whether it's ma'akev, whether you must have leftover blood from this bird after you put it on the mizbeach already to squeeze it out on the mizbeach. Omar Rami Bachomer says, but hi Tana Savar, the Tana over here in this brayso holds shirayim ma'akvi, that the leftover bloods that have to be poured on the foundation of the mizbeach do hold up the kapara. So up until here, the Gemara is bringing that everybody agrees, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shmuel, that the pouring of the leftover blood on the mizbeach is not ma'akiv, but not. Rami Bachomer says here, the Tana in this brayse holds that the leftover bloods being poured on the mizbeach is ma'akiv. And as we'll see in the continuation of the Gemara, this is not by all karbanis, it's specifically by the karban chatos, where the blood is sprayed inside the Beis HaMikdash. The leftovers of those bloods that have to be poured in the mizbeach, it's going to be ma'akiv. Where do I see that the Tana of this brayse holds this? Because the Tanya, it says in the brayse, hakoyin ha'machato isa, by the karban chatos it says, and this is a chatos where the blood is actually sprayed on the outside mizbeach. But what's unique about the karban chatos, even though it's sprayed on the outside mizbeach, but it's sprayed on the top part of the mizbeach. The mizbeach had a chuta sikra, a red line that went in the middle, dividing the top and the bottom half of the mizbeach. By the karban chatos, the blood has to be sprayed on the top half, actually by the corners, by the karnis of the mizbeach. Okay, that's where the pasuk comes in. Now the pasuk says hakayin hamachata oisa, that the kain that was machata this, then he could go ahead and eat from the carbon. Yachlana, the pasuk there says. So that word oisa is an extra word. It's teaching oisa shanitin dam malamayla. Only this carbon that the blood was sprayed above the chota sikra in the right place where the blood of achatas is supposed to be sprayed. But v'loi, it's actually not sprayed. By the carbon achatas, you dip the finger into the bowl of the blood and it's placed there with the finger. But v'loi oisa shanitin dam lamata. But not the one that, not if you took this blood from this chatos and put it on the mizbeach, on the bottom half of the mizbeach. It's the wrong location in the mizbeach. Then it will not complete the kapara, and the kohen will not yet be able to eat from the carbon. Okay, that's the drasha of the extra word of Isa. So now, on this the Braisa goes on to say, Amarta or Amrit, you'll say about this, from where are you coming? Why would you think to say that if you spread it on the wrong location of the mizbeach, on bottom, instead of on the top, that it should qualify? Why do you need this extra word Isa to tell me that it doesn't qualify? It's obvious. It's on the wrong place of the mizbeach, so it shouldn't qualify. So the Braisa explains, because the reason I'm saying this drasha is because miklal shanema, because there's the pasuk where it says v'dam zvachecha yishbayich al yisoid or al mizbeach. The pasuk says that or yishafach, that is v'dam zvachecha yishafach al mizbeach. You pour the dam of the carbon on the mizbeach. What do we learn from that pasuk? We had this earlier in the Masechta. From here we learn a different halacha. Lamadnu linitana b'matan arba. That the carbonis that are sprayed on the outside mizbeach, even the chatos, that has to be sprayed on all four corners. Shem nastam b'matana achas, that even if you sprayed it just one time, kippur. That one time is what brings the kapara. This was the opinion of Beis Hillel that said in the beginning of Perik Beis Shammai that even by a chatos, which is sprayed on the outside mizbeach, if you just give one matana, it's going to be mechaper. So even though the Torah says 4 times, but one brings the kapara. So Yochel, I would think to say similar. So too regarding this detail, that it has to be sprayed specifically on the top part of the mizbeach, but instead you sprayed it on the bottom half of the mizbeach kippur. Maybe this is also should be mechaper. Just like you see, the Torah is not makpid with 4. One brings the kapara. Maybe regarding this detail as well, if it was on the bottom, it should also be mechaper. So therefore, I need this pasuk kayana machata oisa to say that no, it has to be done specifically on the top part of the mizbeach. Okay, now the Braisa goes on to say a different point. But no, I do not need the word oisa, because I have the following Zevochim that would tell me that if it was on the wrong place on the mizbeach, it wouldn't qualify. What Zevochim? V'din hu, I can tell you the following Zevochim. Nemru domim lamayla. There is a carbon chatos that the blood has to be sprayed on the top part of the mizbeach. What is that? A chatos of a behema. And then there's the blood of a carbon chatos, where the blood has to be sprayed on the bottom half of the mizbeach. And where is that? Also by a chatos, but not a behema. By a chatos, which is a bird. So I compared it to madam mamur lamaton, just like regarding the bloods that have to be placed on the bottom half of the mizbeach. Shenosnon lamailon. If they were sprayed on the top half of the mizbeach, loy kiper, the kapara there does not take effect, and that's learned from a pasuk chatasi that it has to be sprayed in its right place. And if it's sprayed on the top, it doesn't take effect. Av dama murun lamailon. So too regarding the chatas, which is from an animal, and the blood has to be sprayed on the top part. Im nosnon lamato loy kiper. If you sprayed it on the bottom, it should not take effect. So since I have this comparison from the chatas of the behemoth to the chatas of the oif, the question that the Braisa is asking is, why are we darshaning the extra word of oisa to teach me this point? So the Braisa goes on to explain, no, you can't learn out from there. Loi, I'll tell you, you can't compare to the chatas of oif where its blood is sprayed always in the bottom. Because if you say regarding the chatas ha'oif that the blood is supposed to be sprayed on the bottom half of the mizbeach, shenitanim b'nesila nesina l'maylam she'ein seifel l'maylam. You know why over there, if you spray it on the top part of the mizbeach, it will not qualify? Because this is blood of a carbon that never belongs to be at all on the top part of the mizbeach. You're spraying it on a part of the mizbeach that does not belong at all to this carbon. That's why it doesn't take effect. This is the bird, chatas ha'oif, that the blood has to be squeezed out on the bottom half of the mizbeach and not on the top part of the mizbeach at all. So therefore, like kippur, if you change the location from the bottom to the top, it doesn't belong there at all. It won't be mechaper. However, Taimer Bel Yoinim, on the other hand, when it comes over here to the chatas of a behemoth, that the blood is supposed to be sprayed on the top part of the mizbeach, shenostan lamata. But if you did it on the wrong part and you did it on the bottom part of the mizbeach, over here I could say that there's a svara to say that it would take effect. Why? Because sheyesh me'en karav lamata. Because what do you do then with the leftovers of this blood of this carbon? You pour it on the bottom part of the mizbeach. So therefore, I cannot learn out from the chatas ha'oif. The chatas ha'oif is different. So that's why over here I need a special pasuk to teach me a kain and machata oisa to tell me that if you pour it on the bottom half of the mizbeach, it will not take effect. Even though this is a carbon that the leftovers you pour on the bottom, but the zrike, or when you place with your fingers on the top of the mizbeach, it must be done on the top of the mizbeach. Okay, but the Braisa is not done yet. The Braisa challenges this point again. Why do I need this extra word of oisa? That the carbon has to be sprayed in the right place, on the top of the mizbeach. I can learn it out yet from another place. Why can't you prove this point from the bloods of a carbon chatos that are brought inside the Beis Hamikdash and are sprayed inside on the inside mizbeach, and learn it out as follows? So regarding the blood brought inside, sheyesh men karev b'chutz. What happens with this blood when you finish doing the spraying in the inside mizbeach? You then bring it to the outside mizbeach and you pour it on the foundation of the outside mizbeach. Okay, but nevertheless, ve'im nastam batchila b'chutz. But if you spray the blood of this instead of the inside mizbeach, you spray it on the outside mizbeach, loy kippur. The kapara does not take effect. All right. So if I see this regarding the shirayim, regarding the damim apnimiyim, the leftovers goes on the outside mizbeach. So this is blood that has a connection to the outside mizbeach. But nevertheless, if you pour it on the outside mizbeach, it's not going to take effect. So over here also, regarding what we're talking about, the bloods of the carbon chatos that have to be sprayed on the top half of the mizbeach, So over here, for sure, I should be able to learn out that if you sprayed it in the wrong place on the bottom of the Mizbeach, it should not take effect. Says the Gemara, Loi, you can't learn out from there. By the domim, by the bloods of the inside Mizbeach, so the Mizbeach hapnimi, when you finish doing the Aveda of the bloods and the inside Mizbeach, you're not done yet. It's not memarkan. It doesn't completely cleanse the person. There's something else to be done. This is the point that the Gemara is going to focus on. What does it mean over here when it says that the bloods that are taken into the inside Mizbeach, that it's not memarkan, that it doesn't yet complete the kapara? However, when it comes to the bloods that you spray from the Karban Chatas on the top part of the Mizbeach, Shahare Karnois Memarkes, once you spray the blood on the top part of the Mizbeach, the kapara is complete. Even if you don't do anything else afterwards, the kapara is totally complete. So therefore, I would think to say that over here, if you pour the bloods on the bottom part of the Mizbeach, that it would be kosher. Right? So you can't learn out from the inside, from the bloods that are brought inside the Beis HaMikdash. And therefore, the Brisa concludes, going back to the first drasha that it said here, Talmud Loima Oisa. Therefore, we have the drasha of the word Oisa, Oisa shenitin dama l'mayla, v'loi shenitin dama l'mata. That if the kohen, after he finishes the aveda of the Karban Chatas, if he wants to be able to eat from this carbon, the blood has to be sprayed on the right place, on the top part of the Mizbeach, not on the bottom part of the Mizbeach. Till there's the Brisa. Now, Rami Bachama brought this Brisa to prove what? To prove the point that over here you have a Tana that holds that the shirayim of the blood is ma'akiv. Where the shirayim of the blood from the inside chatos. So now the Gemara says, "Mai she'ein mizbeach hapnimi memarkan." What did it mean when he said that you can't learn out from the bloods of the mizbeach hapnimi? Why? Because over there, when you're done spraying the blood on the inside mizbeach, it is not complete. It doesn't cleanse completely. You still have something else to do. What else do you have to do? So lav, don't you think that means elu shirayim? After you finish spraying the blood, you then have to take the leftovers of this blood and pour it on the outside mizbeach. That's what it's referring to. If so, I see over here that the Tana of this Brisa holds regarding the chatos apnimius, the blood that's taken inside. When you finish spraying the blood inside, you must pour the blood outside. If not, the kapara does not take effect. That's the source that I see this over here. But this is only regarding the chatos apnimis, not regarding the chatos achitzainis. On the outside chatos, even if you don't pour the blood, the kapara is still in effect. Amalei Rave, but Rave says to Rami Bachame, that's not the pshat in this Brisa. And he proves it because if that's what we're saying, that the bloods of the inside chatas, the shirayim is ma'akiv, and by the bloods of the outside chatas, the shirayim is not ma'akiv. So if so, teisi b'kal v'chaimer. Then if so, you can make the following kal v'chaimer regarding the right location of where you sprayed the blood on the mizbeach, and say as follows: Ma shirayim apnimiyim shesoifan chayva. If when it comes to the inside blood, the blood that's taken inside the Beis HaMikdash, where the end of it, meaning the shirayim, it's an obligation. You must pour it on the foundation of the Mizbeach. Chayva b'chutz, it must be sprayed on the outside Mizbeach. Osam batchila b'chutz like kippur. So even though it's connected to the outside Mizbeach, but if you do the zrika lechatchila on the outside mizbeach in the wrong place instead of the inside mizbeach, like kippur, it does not take effect. Hanitanim l'mayla. So the bloods that are sprayed on the top part of the mizbeach, she'ein seifan chayva. Pouring it then on the bottom of the mizbeach in the end is not an obligation at all. Lamata that is. Again, she'ein seifan l'chayva lamata. It's not an obligation to pour it in the bottom. V'asam batchila lamata. So if he would spray the blood in the wrong location at the bottom of the mizbeach, ein edin shalei kippur. Definitely the kapara should not take effect. So therefore, it can't be that the Tana of this Brisa holds that the pouring of the blood from the inside Karban Chatas on the bottom of the mizbeach is ma'akiv. Because then I would have a kal v'chaimer to say regarding the outside Karban Chatas that you can't spray the blood in the wrong location. I wouldn't need the pasuk of Isa. So it goes against the whole point that this Brisa is trying to say. So therefore, Rav says that's not what the Brisa was saying. Ella ein mizbeach apnimi mimarkan bulvad. What does this mean? When it said here that the blood that you spray on the inside mizbeach is not going to do the job, it's not going to cleanse. What is it saying? It's not coming to say like Rami Bacham thought to say that you still must pour the leftovers on the outside Mizbeach. It's coming to say something else. Ela pareiches. What it's saying is, regarding this carbon, when you bring it inside the Beis HaMikdash, it's not enough to spray it on the Mizbeach. There's something else that has to be done. It has to be sprayed 7 times towards the pareiches. And therefore, that's the stringency that I see on this inside blood. It's a different Indian. So therefore, the point is, the Gemara is saying, Rav is saying, I have no source from here that there's any Tana that holds that the blood to be poured on the foundation of the Mizbeach is ma'akiv. Now the Gemara brings another braise, and this is regarding the shirayim of the blood by the carbon on Yom Kippur. And here we may find an opinion that holds that the shirayim of the blood of Yom Kippur, that is ma'akiv. Because the braise says, what does it say by the pasuk on Yom Kippur? The Gemara brought this in Amar Aleph. V'chila mechaper es hakodesh, that you complete and you mechaper the from the everything that has to be done in the kodesh for Yom Kippur, for the carbon of Yom Kippur. What do you learn from this? In Kippur, kila. If you sprayed all the bloods inside, that has to be done, so you're done. But in loy Kippur, if you did not spray all the bloods, loy kila, then you did not complete it yet. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, this is what Rabbi Akiva says. Now what Rabbi Akiva means to say is, it's the spraying of the blood on the Mizbeach, it's actually in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, on the Pareiches, on the Mizbeach HaPnimi. If all of that is done, then you're done. Anything after that is not required. Amalei Rabbi Yehuda says, why are you darshaning the pasuk in this way? Why shouldn't we darshan the words of the pasuk in the order that it's written? Im kila, if you complete it, then kippur, then you'll have a kapara. Im loy kila, if you did not complete, loy kippur, then you will not have a kapara. She'im chiser achas mikol matanis, if you're missing even one of the places that you had to spray the blood, and even one of them, loy asav loy klum, what you've done is nothing. So it sounds like Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda are basically saying the same thing. It's just Rabbi Akiva is darshaning when it says v'chila machaper, that when are you going to be kila if you were machaper? When are you done if you were machaper? And Rabbi Yehuda is saying darshan the pasuk the other way around. V'chila, if you completed every single one of the sprayings of the blood, then machaper, then it will be machaper. So the Gemara here asks on this, what's the difference? My binayu. What's the difference between the way Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yehuda darshan the pasuk? So Rabbi Yechon and Rabbi Shimon Levi, they argued about this. Chadamar, one opinion is mashmaz darshan ikibinayu. The difference between them is just how you darshan the pasuk. In the halacha, everybody agrees that the only thing that's ma'akiv on Yom Kippur is the sprayings of the blood inside, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, on the Pareiches, and on the Mizbeach. Pouring out the blood on the foundation of the Mizbeach after all of this is not ma'akiv. They both agree to this. The machlokes is how you darshan the pasuk, and as Rashi explains, according to Rabbi Akiva, it says there in the pasuk by Achrei Mois the lashon of chukah. Once it says the word chukah, I know that every single matana is ma'akiv. That word chukah means it's halacha, you must do it, so I know already that it's ma'akiv. So therefore, Rabbi Akiva does not have to darshan v'chila mechaper, that every single matana must be done. Therefore, he's saying that the pasuk, all the pasuk is coming to say is that when you did the avodah inside, you don't have to take the leftovers and pour it on the outside side. That's not ma'akiv. Mashenkin, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that word chukah that it says by an Achrei Mois, it only refers to in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But besides the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the other bloods that are spread in the Pareiches or on the Mizbeach HaPnimi, I wouldn't know that every single matana is ma'akiv. And therefore you have this pasuk, v'chila, to let you know that every single matana is going to be ma'akiv. That's the difference between them. But the halacha is the same. However, v'chadam, or another opinion here is, shirayim ma'akvin ikibinayu. What they're arguing about is whether after you're done with everything and spraying the blood inside, what's with the leftovers? When you pour that on the Mizbeach HaChitzin, is that ma'akiv or not? When Rabbi Yehuda says, v'chila mechaper, that only when you're completed, then it's mechaper, he's coming to add that you must pour the blood on the Mizbeach HaChitzin Yom Kippur. This is specifically regarding Yom Kippur. And if not, it's not going to be mechaper. Says the Gemara, Testayim, I'll bring you a proof that Rabbi Shua ben Levi Yudam Shirayim de Ma'akvi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi is the one that says that the Shirayim by Yom Kippur is Ma'akiv. Because the Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, L'divrei ha'omer, according to the opinion that says Shirayim Ma'akvin, that the leftovers of the blood is going to be Ma'akiv, maybe parecha the maschel betchila b'fnim. In a case where you do not have the leftovers of the blood to pour in the outside Mizbeach, you did all this rikas, but you don't have any leftover blood to pour in the outside Mizbeach. What do? It's ma'akiv. So Rabbi Shimon Levi says, according to that opinion that it says that it's ma'akiv, what you have to do is you're going to have to shech the carbon again and do all the zrikas over again. You can't just do bring another carbon and not pour the blood on the foundation of the Mizbeach and thinking that, I already did all this rikas before. It only becomes shirayim, it only is called leftovers, if you first are going to spray the bloods on the Mizbeach. And this is a unique thing, because we once learned before in the Masechta, regarding all the other stages of the Avodah that has to be done in Yom Kippur, it has to be sprayed in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, then on the Pareiches, then on the Mizbeach HaPnimi. If the blood spills in between, and you have to bring another carbon, you don't have to start over from the beginning. You start over from this section where you are holding in. But over here, regarding the shirayim, according to the opinion that says that shirayim is ma'akiv, you have to spray the blood to make this shirayim. So we clearly see here that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is the one that's saying that there is such an opinion. So who's that opinion? That's Rabbi Yehuda here. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is the one that's interpreting that Rabbi Yehuda holds that you must pour the shirayim on the mizbeach hachitzim when you're done, not Rabbi Yochanan. Says the Gemara, Lav Dafke Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is interpreting this brayso this way, because Atu Rabbi Yochanan Lesle Hasvara. Does Rabbi Yochanan not hold to this idea that there is some Tana that holds regarding Yom Kippur that the shirayim of the blood is going to be ma'akiv? But for Rabbi Yochanan said, Tana Rab Nechemye taught his halacha that Kedivrei Omer shirayim makvin. Like the opinion that says that the shirayim are ma'akiv. This is the halacha that Nechemye says later in the Masechta, that if someone pours shirayim of the blood outside the Beis HaMikdash, you're going to be over on shchutei chutz, because this is something that must be done by the carbon inside the Beis HaMikdash. So Rabbi Yochanan says in this, that Rabbi Nechemye that says that regarding shchutei chutz it's going to be a problem, it's because he follows the opinion that the shirayim is ma'akiv. So therefore I see over here that Rabbi Yochanan also holds it to such an opinion. This is Rabbi Nechemye. So Ella, regarding Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, I could say the same thing. Kedivrei Omer. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is saying that there is such an opinion, but v'lav lahani tanoi. So it's not these tanoim over here, not necessarily over here. This is going on Rabbi Yochanan. There is such an opinion, but it's not. It's going on Rabbi Nechemye, but it's not over here in this brayso. Lachanami kedivrei Omer v'lav lahani tanoi. There is such an opinion that the shirayim of the dam is going to be ma'akiv, but it's not necessarily Rabbi Yehuda in this brayso. Just like regarding Rabbi Yochanan, he's speaking about Rabbi Nechemye. So too over here, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, it's not necessarily the Tana of this brayso.